Welcome to Midwest Hunting Outdoors. In this episode, we're going to be with Jennifer Felton, National Award-winning artist.
See how she takes a piece of wood like this, from this, to this beautiful piece of art.
Hi, this is Tim and Doyle. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses,
A podcast about the outdoors, hunting,
and being a steward of the land.
Hey, thanks for joining the channel today. We've got, Tim, we've got a special guest, Jennifer Felton, who we're trying to debate if it's art or woodworking or wood carving, so we're just going to call it master artist. Because the work that she does, and we'll include some pictures here, is just amazing work. So, but we're going to talk with Jennifer today how she takes something that she sees out in nature or out of her window here in her art shop and turns it into some of these beautiful pieces of wood. So Jennifer, thank you first of all for allowing us to spend some time with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming to the studio.
Absolutely, it's beautiful.
And so, maybe let's get into just getting to know you a little bit. If you could introduce yourself and how you got into woodworking and, maybe what's your latest, you talked about some challenges coming up here in April.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. Maybe the first thing I should mention is I'm always pushing myself to try something new. And I'm not really afraid to take a leap. So I guess that's how I kind of got into this too. My husband and I ended up buying 60 acres of timber northeast of us here and wanted to build a cabin on it. So we decided to build this cabin, and it's primitive, completely off the grid, and so we built it one summer together, and I wanted an owl on the newel post going up to the sleeping quarters. And I thought, I can do this, I can carve an owl. Having never carved anything before in my life, I got one picture, which is ridiculous now compared to how many pictures I have to start with, something that I do now. One picture, borrowed Dad's Fordham and just dove in. Reasonably satisfied with the outcome, went to the paint store, got some stain of all things, and stained it, and it now lives on the newel post over at the cabin. And I thought, well, this was pretty fun. I liked the challenge of this because it was 3D visual challenge, plus new tools, plus wood, and all these different things that I could kind of bring into play together. I went to a 4-year art school, but to study graphic design. So in Minneapolis, we had 6 weeks of woodworking and 6 weeks of welding. So that's kind of how you start as a freshman, which is pretty cool. I loved that part of it. But there was really nothing that ever got me back to those courses later on because I went on the graphic design track. So I knew that this was something I wanted to get back to and loved it. So I decided to do a great horned owl next, which is ridiculous. That's a huge project, but I did it. And I created what's called a smoothie, meaning each feather does not have a contour. It's just a kind of a shape of an outline of an owl, and then you paint it to trick the eye into believing that it has dimension, right? So I painted it and thought, again, this was fun. But it can't just live on my mantle, that's boring. So I got online, found the Word World Carving Competition, bought myself a ticket to Ocean City, Maryland, flew out there myself, entered it, and I won.
Wow.
So it was
with the owl?
With the owl, yes,
Nice.
yes, the great horned owl. And it was the novice, lowest end of the whole competition, had no idea that this world even existed, had never met a carver before in my life. And I saw everything. I saw the masters and all the tools and all the different things you could have. And these people were just so willing to share everything that they were doing, all their tips and techniques and things. And I thought, well, I got to do this. So I bought everything I could think of that would help me, all the tools. I thought, this is what I'm doing. Came home, we carved out a little corner in the basement in one of the last room we had left in the basement. And that became my little carving studio. It was like 8 foot by 6 foot, and then we cleared out more of the room, and it came 8 foot by 10 foot, and so I had that little space for 14 years that I worked with, and just kept entering. And I knew I wanted to be a master, and this past spring I got there.
Awesome.
Wow,
So
congratulations.
that was my journey, yeah. So just self-taught and
as
kept
they
pushing
say,
myself.
the rest is history, right?
I guess.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, folks will include pictures here, but we're living it here as we're looking around the room at some of the art, and it's just amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe a good place to start after this is, can you kind of walk us through, your process of going from an idea, probably, an idea to one of these masterpieces that you've got in your shop?
Yeah, I can. There's So, like I said, I like to challenge myself. So to spend 900 to 1100 hours at a minimum on one piece, you really got to be into it, right? You really have to have a drive for getting to the end. So I always look for different ways I can have competitive advantages, or things that I'm interested in, like the paint job on the pheasant. That's going to be hard. I got to try it. Or, the piece I'm doing now, there's no way it should balance. It should look like it's tipping over, but it's not going to. Those little things that challenge me keep me invested long term, right? So I try to pick something that's interesting to me in some way that'll help me persist to the end. So I figure out what that is, and then I start with drawings. Typically, I'll do something that's like a concept drawing. Depending on if it's just for me, I'll do a quick sketch. If it's for a patron, then I'll do something more detailed, because they're going to want that original sketch back. Sometimes I've done it just in my head and I've not drawn anything out, because I know what I want it to look like, so I can get there. Depends on how much time I want to put in up front. And then I'll figure out my patterns. So I've never used anyone else's pattern ever. You can, if you want to try to carve things. That's a legit way to go. For the carving competitions, though, that I enter, it's not allowed. So I've never started that way. So I'll draw a top pattern and a side pattern, put them on a whatever block of wood it's going to fit on, trace it this way, cut it out on the bandsaw. And then I'll usually go outside and use a 4-inch grinder to get a little closer. So you still have the hard edges when you cut it out on the bandsaw, right? You've got the profiles, but you still got to round the body out of it. Right. And I can do that with the Fordham tool, and if it's a small enough bird, that works. If it's something like a great horned owl or an eagle, though, you're spending hours with the Fordham tool with a sanding drum, and that's just not worth the time. So the 4-inch grinder with a sanding, wheel on it just works the best. Plus, it's kind of gritty and kind of like welding and, getting it, you just get in there better. I like being all sawdusty and covered with masks. And anyway, so that's part of the fun. Then I come inside, go to the Fordham tool, refine more. And then I get to the point where I'm really figuring out the symmetry, always the center line's always preserved. And so I'm measuring down and across, and I'm making sure that every step I go through has the symmetry or intentionally doesn't, right? If one wing's down and one wing's up, then I need to plan for that and account for that, which makes it all much harder. Or both wings out is like doing 3 birds instead of just one. Right. So it depends on the points that you need to reach. But if it's just a bird that's perched, it's a little easier to get the symmetry matched. And I just keep working my way through it. So I'll round the body, typically work on the tail, start to define those individual feathers and the undertail coverts, and then I'll work up the bird. I usually don't set the eyes and commit to the face right away. Other carvers do it reverse. They want the face first, and then they'll work down, because if you screw up the face, you're basically losing the rest of the piece. So you can cut the head off and put a new block on. It's just you compound the work then, because then you've got lines you need to hide and work around through the rest of the process. So once you get the piece carved, then I'm doing all of the individual feather contours. So each feather, it's like landscaping. Each feather has its own bump series to it. And then everything needs to be as thin as possible. And the Tupelo is perfect for that, because while it's really pretty soft and, lightweight, I can put my fingernail into it and dent it, but it's strong. Yeah. So that's what's really nice about it. It also holds a nice sharp edge compared to like a basswood, which will fuzz on you when you go to sand it. This doesn't fuzz at all. So it's nice to know that you can preserve that edge.
Is that the 2 types of wood that most carvers use, is the Tupelo?
That I've heard of, yes. And I don't hear of many people using basswood much in what I do in the realism. They might in other aspects of carving. Obviously, people will do, ash and walnut and things if they want to preserve the wood grain and they aren't going to paint something out all the way. And they just want to show that, like my entry door. It's just the relief carving, and I wanted you to see that grain. So I get to that point where all the landscaping, if you will, is all in place. And then I'll take the wood burner and I'll do each quill. I usually press in the quills depending on where it is, or I'll wood burn them in. And then every barb of every feather. So there's thousands of wood burned lines all over it. I'm usually wearing a micro visor to do that. And I'm about this far away from my piece. And just really concentrate to get those as close as I can. And then weirdly, the whole thing gets covered in white.
White.
Yeah, because it's the wood burning is so beautiful that I've been tempted at times to leave it wood burned because it's really pretty. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, but then I don't get to paint it, and then it's not going to, really come to life like I want it to. But I thought, well, yeah, I got to see it all the way through. But one of these days, I'm going to stop a piece at wood burned. we'll see if I get there. I don't know, but
So I'm assuming the white kind of gives you a clean canvas,
Exactly.
if you will, so the
Exactly.
color mix pops better.
yeah. And some people will use what's called a gesso, which is a paint that is like a primer, if you will, if you're going to relate it to something else in the paint world. But it has little pieces of marble in it, and so it's gonna take the tan away from here, right? So if I've got tan, or let's say this is the dark of the wood burn, because it would be about this hue. If I put let's say, the green or the red of the pheasant's head on this is going to show through. It's like painting a red wall in your house white.
Yeah.
You're always going to see that color underneath it. So you've got to get it to a neutral tone before your true color that you want will be there. And so you've got to get rid of the tan, otherwise it's going to skew every color you put on top of it. So then everything's painted white, but I can only paint it in white in stages because I don't want to fill in my burn lines. And they're so fine that I could easily put too thick of a coat on, and then there went all that texture work. So I do that in a lot of stages until I get it to the point I want. And sometimes if I know something's going to be brighter, like the wattle of the pheasant, it's going to be a bright red. And I even used hunter orange on that for some accent when I was painting it. I made that a lot whiter than the rest because I knew I wanted that intense color in that spot. So just an example, like it's kind of modeled in terms of where I put the white, and then I start the painting. The painting is a whole nother thing. I'll typically start by blocking in the patterns, and I would start the tail and work my way up. But I'll block in the patterns, and then I'll go back and add layers and layers and layers of paint to intensify everything. So I bet I go around the bird 8 to 10 times with, the different layers of paint. And then if it gets iridescent or something like that toward the end, the extreme highlights and the extreme low lights I'll be adding toward the end. But it's tricky because at the beginning, when you're blocking in that pattern, you're adding a lot of paint. But a lot of paint is like the size of my thumbnail for the day. Like that's a lot of paint for oil paint, because I'm an oil painter, not an acrylic, which makes me different than the other people that carve with me. I like the control of it. I like the slow dry of it. I like that I can model it. And I'm a brush painter. Hate the airbrush. I hate the airbrush. You did hear me say that. I think it hates. I think it hates me too. I've never gotten used to it, and my worst fear is getting a beautiful gradient and then having it go plop and splat all over my beautiful gradient. So I refuse to work with it. I'm stubborn. So I'm a brush painter, but you start with applying a lot of paint, and the more you work, you're just dabbing and dabbing. So you've got to really kind of use some self-control to put less and less paint on. But I use paper plates like those there at about the size of, a small sandwich plate or something.
5-6 inch.
Those are my palettes. I put my oil paint on those, and then I use the mixing sticks, but I can cover that up and use that paint again the next day a little bit, depending on what color it is and how fast it dries. But the white is the slowest to dry and takes 7 to 10 days. Oh. So you also have to plan for that, I like that challenge. The study and the hours that it took for the life-size eagle that you started with, I took maybe 7 or 8 trips down to a rehabilitator and sat in a room. It was so great. She locked me in the room. It was so awesome. Got locked in the room that was like it's an old horse stall with an eagle that wasn't tethered, but she's partially blind from lead poisoning, so she's an education bird now that Kay uses to go to the schools. And so I got to be locked in the room with her, and she kind of came over and bluffed me a few times, and she'd call, and she was not unsettled that I was there because she's used to humans. She's an ed bird, but I was a different human, so she had to kind of figure out how bold is she? Can I scare her? I'm the king of the bird world, which she's saying to me, and I just, Kay advised me, just sit quietly and observe and be fine, but it was thrilling.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, because those talons and the power they have. I've been hit in the face by eagle wings studying them, and it's just, I don't know, it's just great. The magic you feel when you're around a bird of prey, when they're on someone's glove, is just really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. Tim, what questions do you have? I'm kind of dominating the question.
Well,
my answers are all so long.
No,
sorry.
you're doing great.
I don't even know if it's so much a question. It's like, Joel's the one that introduced me to you and asked me to go out to your website.
Okay.
And, as I'm sitting here listening to you, this is what's going through my mind. It's like, boy, she's a national award-winning artist. She's a carver, painter, right? Design. the research and study. It's just all the little facets that go into making a piece really come alive. I mean, it's awe-inspiring, and I really mean that. It's
Thank
pretty
you.
impressive.
There's a lot of different pieces to it, and I think if you're curious enough and hungry enough to really do your best, that you're going to keep seeking the answers to the questions you have. Right? Nothing's ever. This is my flaw. I will tell you my flaw. I have super high expectations of myself. I never meet my own expectations ever. I look at that pheasant, I see everything I did wrong. I like it. I'm proud of it. I think it's a good piece, but I can tell you what I wish I'd have done different on everything.
Still
So
beautiful.
I think that hunger and that curiosity pushes me to, okay, what's the strategy here? What's the emotion here? What's the time of year? I'm thinking through all of those small details because it lights my fire, right? It keeps me going, keeps me hungry for more, but it also helps me persist to the end. And then every piece I do, I feel like I get better,
But Jennifer,
which is kind of cool.
what you just describes not the average individual.
Yeah.
Oh.
Exactly.
Maybe I take that for granted, huh?
You are a top quarter percenter.
Thank you for
I
that.
mean,
Yeah,
it's impressive.
I sometimes I have to admit, I feel like everybody has the same vision I do. I can look across the farm field and think, okay, if I would put a house there and a pond there, and the wind block would be there, and the driveway would go this way, and here's how it would lay out, and maybe I would change it that way because of these reasons, and I can picture it done. And I think that's one of my. I feel like everybody can do that. And Todd, my husband's constantly saying, "Yeah, no, people can't do that. I can close my eyes and tell you what this room would look like with wallpaper on the walls. It's part of what I do."
Yeah, it's awesome.
So I just assume everybody has that skill.
I'm on Todd's side here.
Yeah.
Take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
But, well, your passion certainly comes out.
Took me a while to figure that out.
And through. So.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions, Jake. So first one is, where do you get your inspiration on? Hey, I'm gonna do a pheasant, or I'm gonna do great horned owl. What is it that says this is my next project?
There's a logical answer to part of it, COVID, weirdly. And then the other is it just has to interest me. So I'll do the first one. So I was primarily a raptor carver up until COVID hit. So I did the owls, did the falcons, did the hawks, did the eagles, because that was the category I entered in the World Show as I worked my way up. When you work your way up from novice to intermediate to advanced and then get into masters, you have to win multiple years in a row to get moved up to the next category. Your division. You can't just go on your own. So I want it, because of the intense study and focus, it's fun to be around those birds, and I know I can find them. It's hard to find a songbird. They just kind of fly through and that you can't really see them, but I know I can go study with a rehabilitator for a great horned owl or an eagle or something. There's state parks that have them and things. So that's where I started. But then COVID hit, and I did an owl and an eagle because they didn't have the competition, but I didn't quit carving. I thought, oh, this is a chance to get ahead and up my odds, right? Because then I can put two pieces in one category and have a chance at first. Two chances at first, maybe, competing against myself, which is kind of a bummer, but my odds get up, which is good.
Sure.
So I had the great horned owl and the eagle, and then I thought, uh-oh. COVID hit, still was ongoing. So the next year they didn't have the competition. I thought, okay, now this is a bit ridiculous. I don't want to compete against myself in 3 different ways. So I diversified and decided to do the pheasant, which was upland game, so different category, but still in the same division. And then again, they didn't have the competition, so I did a songbird. So it was the first upland game bird and the first songbird that I'd ever done that actually put me over the edge into the masters, because it was so strange. The people that were there at the competition that year had never seen it done before, which I'm pretty proud of. But I was in advanced, and I had 1 double blue, meaning I had 1 blue ribbon in category, and then they take all the category firsts together and they judge first for division, which is advanced, right below masters. You have to get 2 blue ribbons twice to get into masters. So I got my first one before COVID happened. So I'm like, oh, COVID's handled, managed. And so they're going to have the competition. The first year I'm coming back fierce. So I came back with 4 pieces. And first year Todd went with me, which was cool after so many years of going myself. I'm brave enough to do, but it's fun to have a buddy, to go with you and share the joy. And so I had an upland game, songbird, and then 2 in birds of prey. And I got first in all of those. So I took first in all 3 categories. So like out of songbirds, it's like 250, 300 people I competed against. In birds of prey, maybe 25, 30. And in upland game, 4 or 5. So it was really like varied. So I got first, and then they took all 3 of my firsts and the other couple of firsts, the categories I wasn't in, and put them together. And then I got first, second, and third for the entire division.
Oh, wow.
Which nobody there had ever remembered one artist doing in 1 year. So that was super cool.
Wow.
So that was the reason I did those that year. Now when I pick a piece, I just want it to challenge me and really be something handsome or beautiful in the end. Depends on what I'm going for. But when I do commission pieces for people, I'm not thinking, oh, this isn't a commission piece, or isn't an award piece, I'll take it easy. It means just as much to me as doing an award piece. So I'll trick it out, or I'll try a new technique, or I'll do something different to figure it out. And that's what keeps me excited, because I'm always learning something. I'm always pushing myself. If I'm not pushing myself, I'm bored.
So it created another question.
As I rambled.
Is there a category you think that's the most competitive?
Yeah, I think the most crowded is songbirds in advanced before you get to masters. Once you get to masters, it's flat. There aren't the categories anymore, or as easily discernible categories. So I would say that songbirds is the toughest in advanced, and I would say birds of prey is the second toughest.
So if someone was interested in commissioning you, what does that process look like?
Just get a hold of me through the website or give me a call. Tell me what you're interested in. I typically, ask questions. Do you want a half size, a third size, a life size? Because I can do different sizes of things too. It doesn't have to be full size. Sometimes people have a shelf they want it to fit under a mantle, some size requirements, which is fine. So I make sure to listen to those. And then I want to know if they have a story that they want captured. Like I was walking through the woods and great horned owls aren't seen much, but I saw one. I had this moment, this connection with it, or, something that means something to them.
Sure.
And then I try to figure out how to tell that story in what I'm doing, because it makes it more special to the individual.
Sure.
And I want to try to hit that chord if I can. And I'll do a drawing, a realistic drawing. And then I take a photograph of that, because they usually aren't around my neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. And I'll send them the photo or the drawing digitally, and then they get to approve it or say, "Oh, Jennifer, could you make this change, or could you make this change?" And I'll accommodate and make that change. Or I'll say, "I'm not sure that's going to look okay, but here's what idea you sparked in my head when you asked for the change. How about this is an alternative?" So we kind of talk it through until we get a composition we like, and then I'll start carving. Depends on what it is. I think the longest it's taken me to do a full bird, half size or larger, was but 4 months, solid through. So I'll create the sculpture, but all the way through I'm taking pictures of the process too, because you get the original drawing, the sculpture or the carved piece, and then a book in the end. So the book, because I have the graphic design background that I mentioned before, I'll take those pictures and work them into a book, a photo book. And then I make 2 copies of it. The commission or art patron gets 1 copy, and I keep 1 copy, and that's it. I never make more copies of that book.
Yeah, that's great.
It's kind of fun for them to have the provenance, and
that is a great touch.
You can't take the pieces everywhere, and sometimes people can't always come to your home, but you could take the book and show someone if you were interested in doing that. Yeah.
All right, so I've got my last question. So I'm an aspiring artist.
Okay.
And I would like to I'd like to attain the heights that you've done. What advice would you give someone that's early on in their career to get to where you're at?
Sounds like don't get COVID. That's one I learned here.
That's number 1, yeah. Or if you do, don't sit on the couch the whole time. Right? While the pandemic happens, keep carving. I would say expose yourself to the world, right? Like get as many different books as you can get. I haven't taken many classes from people. You can take classes from some of the master carvers and go to like a 10-day seminar with them. Those are pretty interesting. because they walk you through the whole process and you can understand how they do it. And it's fun because you're around like-minded individuals. I've done a few of those. Not sure I learned what I expected to learn, but it was fun to be around the individuals. I think I was just a little more advanced than the class I signed up for. I think I didn't pick the right class, but to be around those artists was just, I still can remember the things I learned from the artists, not from the hands-on, but what the artist said and what still pushes me today from what they said.
Sure.
So that's kind of nice. The other thing is, I would say go to the competitions, pick where you want to be. Like the first time I went out to the World Carving Competition, I wanted to be over there at the master's table. I'm going to get there. And I set the goal for myself and I just figured out how to do it. Don't give up, keep pushing all the way through and seek the answers you need. It's not going to be the same answer for everybody, because someone's going to have a better skill set in this area or a better skill set in this area, and work on the skill sets that you need to improve and seek the help you need. Don't be afraid to ask people. The carving community is incredibly generous and giving with advice and tips and tricks and the don't do's as well. You know, you didn't know your bird here, this is an epic fail. They'll flat out tell you that. Do this next time, and you're like, oh, I'm never going to forget that. I've had a few of those.
Jennifer, let's kind of close out the episode with, let's get your website out there again. What's the website?
JenniferFeltonArt.com.
And
You can just search my name too and likely find it.
And we'll put that on the episode
Great.
here so people can get to it really
Okay,
easy.
sure. Feel
And
free
then-
to email me questions that you have. If you're a carver and you have some questions, I'd be glad to give you some advice too.
And then you've got some more publicity coming up here in April, looks like.
Yeah, Popular Woodworking magazine. I hope that isn't shining incorrectly. I'll do this a little bit so you can see. But on the cover, and then there's a 16-page article inside that walks you through how I carved the pheasant that was in Pheasants Forever. So you can see step by step what I did and learn some tips and tricks and techniques. And some of my tools too are a little bit unusual. I'll use anything I can find if it does the job. So there's some step-by-step instructions there. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, congratulations on, I can see why you're award-winning
Oh,
job
thank
is
you.
doing around you with the
You're too
passion
kind.
that you have.
Thank
So
you.
want to thank you
Yes,
for the time.
absolutely,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
You're welcome, fellas. Thanks for coming to the studio.
You're welcome. Until next time,
Be safe, have fun, and get outdoors.
Desperado, sitting in a old Monte Carlo, a man whose heart is hollow.